In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna points out that the essence of life in the external world is suffering. He says that this world is dukhalayam ashashvatam. This is, he says, anityam asukham lokam. So this is a place of misery, dukhalayam, ashashvatam, where nothing lasts. Anityam, asukham, it is a place which is impermanent. Anityam, asukham, where there is no lasting happiness. He also tells Arjun that Arjun, look around you. When he's speaking and defining what is knowledge, he tells Arjun, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukha Doshanu Darshanam. Look around you, Arjun. Birth and death, old age and disease, fault and misfortune and happiness, all these are guaranteed to you all. Many years later, hundreds of years later, the Buddha also repeated. He said that the essence, you cannot begin spiritual life until you understand that the essence of life is suffering. Because birth is suffering, death is suffering, disease is suffering, old age is suffering. To be parted from someone you love, that's great suffering. And to be forced to bear the presence of someone you cannot stand, very great suffering. So, what is this suffering? How does it come upon us? And how can we get beyond it? Indeed, this is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. The aspiration of the person who reads the Bhagavad Gita is to become like the saints who are described in the Bhagavad Gita. Not saints with shaven heads and orange robes. Not saints with hair that has been pulled from their head. But those who are fixed on God, established in God consciousness, and who continue to do their duties in a spirit of devotion and renunciation. Anashritaha karma phalam karya karma karotiya sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. One who performs his God-given duties without taking shelter of the fruits of his labor, he is the true yogi, he is the true sannyasi, not one who lights no fire and does no work. And such a person, Krishna points out, will transcend suffering. Dukheshu anudignamana sukheshu vigata spriya vita raga bhaya krodha siddhi muni uchate. Indeed, he will be indifferent to sama lostashma kanchana. He will look upon a rock and a piece of gold with equal emotional value. Surin mitrarya udasina madhyastha dvesha bandhushu sadhushu api cha papeshu sama buddhir vishishyate. He will look upon friend, well-wisher, mediator, enemy, saint, sinner, all of them he will look with equal vision. Vidya vinay sampanne brahmane gavi hastini shuni chaiva sapakecha pandita samadarshina. He will be a pandit who looks upon a brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog eater. He looks upon all of them with equal vision. He will be transcendent to joy and sorrow, to heat and cold, to honor and dishonor. Jitatmana prashantasya paramatmaha samahitaha sito shana sukha dukheshu tatha manapanayo. For one who has conquered his mind, for him God is already reached. For him, heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor are all the same. But how to move from suffering to transcendence of suffering? That is given in the Bhagavad Gita. First, we must understand why we suffer. In this world, there are three types of suffering. One is suffering due to the gods and natural forces, the divine forces over which we have no control. You go for a nice holiday with your family to a beach in Thailand, and suddenly, before you know what's happening, there's a tsunami. What can you do? You go to California and you enjoy in the forest until there is a forest fire. Who started the tsunami? Who started the forest fire? These are all, or you go for a holiday on the southern states of the United States, and you will find that there will be a hurricane. How do you deal with these? These are all divinely arranged, and they are called Adi Daivik. Adi Daivik means these are sufferings that are caused by the gods. These are sufferings that are caused by natural forces. These are sufferings that have been caused by forces beyond your understanding and beyond your control. In fact, in the Bhagavad, there is a example of a lecture being given to the Daityas by the son of Hiranyakashipu, by Prahlad. And he tells them that, my dear friends, did you ever look for misery? Did you ever look for troubles? Did you ever look for a tsunami? Did you ever look for a hurricane? Did you ever look for forest fire? But did they not come upon you without your asking for them? Sukham Indrakam Daitya Deha Yogena Dehina Sarvam Labhyate Daivat Yatha Dukham Ayatnata. So, when miseries come to you unsought and unasked, why do you look for happiness, worldly happiness in that way? That also will come to you, unsought and unasked. So all miseries that are caused by natural forces, now the monsoon is coming. One day you may forget your umbrella. And as you step out of the house, you are caught in a downpour. This is called Adi Daivik. Some unfortunate soul will be hit by a lightning in the monsoon. Some others will be drowned in flooded waters. All these are Adi Daivik. These are all caused by natural forces. These sufferings are called Adi Daivik miseries. The next type of misery is called Adi Bhautik misery. Adi Bhautik sufferings are sufferings that are caused by other people. They may be caused by a dog that attacks you on the road while you pass by. They may be caused by mosquitoes that come and bite you. They may be caused by other human beings, either in your home or at your place of work. So miseries caused by other human beings are also known as Adi Bhautik, and this is the second type of suffering that we experience in the world. The third type of suffering that we experience in the world is called Adhyatmik. Adhyatmik is that misery that starts from within us. The suffering that starts in the mind, the suffering that starts in the body. It's very important for all of you to understand that mind and body are not separate. Mind and body are but one. And therefore, when you experience sufferings of the mind, they will translate into the body. And when you have sufferings of the body, these sufferings of the body will then affect your mind. Such misery is called very clearly adhyatmic misery. Adhyatmic misery. So, because of Adi Daivik miseries and Adi Bhautik miseries, miseries caused by natural forces and by other living entities, there will be some pain. But my friends, the real suffering is caused by Adhyatmic miseries. Because some pain is inevitable in the world, but suffering is your choice. That is, there may be miseries caused by natural forces. There may be miseries that are caused by other human beings or other animals or other creatures. But whether you let those pains come and go is up to you, or whether you want to wallow in them again and again and again. Oh, why me? What did I deserve? What did I do to deserve that? What should I do in order to get back at this person? How I hate God for why is he doing bad things to good people like me? That's called suffering. And the more you get into cycles of thought that are the cause of your suffering, the more these patterns of thinking persist on and on and on and on until finally they become natural to you. And as they become natural to you, it affects your brain chemistry. And as it affects your brain chemistry, as it affects the vibrations and the electrical activity in your brain and the circuits that your brain is trapped into repeating again and again, you go into different stages of mental illness. So therefore, you have to understand that body and mind are but one. And not only mind and body are but one, but also if you do not control your mind, if you do not know how to pacify your mind, if you do not know how to transcend your mind, if you do not know how to annihilate your mind, even for short periods in the day, then you will suffer what is known as mind-body illness. Mind-body illness occurs in different stages. The first stage of mind-body illness is called psychic. So you find people who are always ready to burst into temper. They are always ready to fire you, to yell at you, to shout at you, and anyone else who's unfortunate enough to cross their path. So they're always irritable, they're always angry, they're always upset, they're always depressed. This stage of mind-body illness is called psychosomatic illness. It's called psychic illness because right now they don't have any physical complaints. That's why it's called psychic. They only have mental disturbances. They become paranoid. They burst into temper. They go into depression. They have anxiety attacks. They have panic disorder. This is the first stage of what we call as psychic illness in mind-body medicine. The next stage from psychic illness is that this psychic illness now starts giving that person pain and gives that person pain not in one place or one location, but it gives that person pain all over the body. Indeed, what does it do? It gives the patient multiple aches and multiple pains. He'll tell the doctor, doctor, idhar bhi darad hota hai, udhar bhi darad hota hai, यहाँ भी होता है, इधर भी होता है, सब जगह होता है दर्द. So there is no single locus for the pain that the person is having. The pain seems to be here, there, and everywhere. This stage is known as psychosomatic illness. So you sometimes ask people, मम्मी किधर दर्द होता है? घुटने में होता है? नहीं, हाँ घुटने में भी होता है, लेकिन पीठ में भी होता है, कभी कभी इधर पेट में भी होता है. So this is psychosomatic illness. The next stage is what is called as somatic illness. Now the person starts having symptoms localized to one position. He says, I'm having pain in my chest. Only in my chest. Over my heart, I'm having pain. And you take the person straight to the hospital. You do all the tests necessary. You do his 2D echo. You do his angiogram or CT angiogram. And you find that, why, he's fit as a fiddle. There's nothing wrong with him. But the pain is there. And the pain is localized to one area of the body. This stage is called somatic. Or the person is having pain in the back. I'm having severe pain in the back. So the doctor advises him to get an MRI to see whether he's got a disc prolapse. But the MRI is normal. It shows that there is no disc prolapse at all. So the first stage, there are no physical symptoms, just irritation, anger, depression, anxiety, etc. The second stage, the pain seems to wander all over the body, and different parts of the body are having pain. Pain in the knee, pain in the back, pain in the stomach, pain here, there. No one area. So that is called psychosomatic. The third is called somatic, because now there is pain in the back, one area only, or pain in the chest, one area only. But when you do all the tests which are required, you find that everything is normal. Then comes the kicker. The disease which started as psychic goes on to being psychosomatic. From psychosomatic, it goes on to becoming somatic. And finally, it goes to organic. So this time, once again, the pain is localized to one part. But when you do the angiogram for the chest pain, yes, you find that the patient is having significant narrowing in his vessel, which is causing him continuous angina. When you do the MRI for his back, because he's having back pain, unlike the previous time, you can now see that he has a disc prolapse. So the disease started with psychic stage. It moved on to the psychosomatic stage with pain in several places of the body, but not localized. Then it went on to the somatic stage where it was localized to one part of the body. And finally, it moved on to the organic phase, where you actually find evidence of disease. This is the progression. The body is connected to the mind in various ways. There is a hypothalamico-pituitary adrenal axis. Your whole endocrine system depends on that. And through your process of stress, through the process of mental distress, you get disease, which affects the entire endocrine system. Also, there is what we call as a psychoneuroimmunology. whereby the thinking process through the brain has nerves which are connected to the immunological system, and they can bring about resistance to disease. Or if you're in a state of continuous constant distress, then it leads to what we know as none other than having suppression of the immune system, and all the diseases suddenly seem to pounce upon you. So it's important for us to understand that mind and body are one, and diseases of the mind can cause diseases of the body. And then there are diseases caused by the genes in your body. You're carrying those genes. From life after life, you've been carrying that mind with you. And therefore, you're carrying diseases with you encoded in your genes. And in fact, once again, even though it's a disease that has been tripped by an environmental or genetic cause, your state of mental health has a direct influence on your ability to deal with that disease. So if you have a strong mind, it can fight the disease in your body. If your mind is weak, disease will take over your body. And in fact, that weak mind may become the cause of the disease in your body. This is the cause of suffering. How do we anticipate that suffering? And how do we prevent it? How do we transcend it? And how do we engage in doing activity that will suspend all the diseases that are out there? The actual truth is that if you are centered, you are spiritually centered, cognitively skilled, emotionally intelligent, you will maintain yourself in a state of physical fitness. This is natural. But if you are not spiritually centered, if you are not cognitively skilled, if you are not emotionally intelligent, then certainly you will also simultaneously suffer physical illness. So it's important that we become spiritually centered, cognitively skilled, emotionally intelligent, and do our duty to be physically fit. The adhyatmic miseries that we have, they begin with our misidentification of the soul with Prakriti. You who are the soul that pervades this body, yatha prakashayatya ekah, just as you illuminate just as the entire universe is illuminated by the sun, so also your soul illuminates the entire body with consciousness. Therefore, if you are spiritually centered, if you are situated as a nobody who understands that he is not this Prakriti, he understands he is not this mind, he is not this body, he is not this bundle of karmas that have become wrapped up as prarabdha, to that extent you will not be affected by it. And the best way Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita is to be constantly engaged in your work in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to that all-pervading Lord. Understanding you have no right to the fruits, nor do you have any right to consider yourself to be the doer, nor should you abstain from doing work. Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan ma karma phala heturvur mate sangostura karmi. So do your duty, do your job, perform your activities in a spirit of sacrifice to this all-pervading Lord. and automatically other people will trouble you less. Especially if you act without desiring any fruits. You will see wherever there's conflict in the world, the conflict is for the fruit, not for the person who does the work. The person who does the work without desiring the fruit, adi bhautik miseries are very little, because they all think he's a wonderful guy. He doesn't ask for credit, he doesn't ask for anything, and he's doing his job and he's doing his work. So to perform your work as worship, to make your work a meditation upon God, that is the first and most important way by which you can relieve yourself from suffering. And God, who is seated in your heart, recognizing that you are worshipping Him through your work, will guide you from within the heart. Tesham satatam yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upyanti te. Tesham evanukampartham aham ajnanajam tamah nashamya atma bhavasto jnana deepena vasvatah. He says, for one who's constantly trying to find me, seated in his heart with the shining lamp of knowledge, I destroy his darkness born out of ignorance. And also, what happens? Krishna says that he is seated in your heart. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridedeshe arjuna tishtati brahmyan sarva bhutani yantrarudhani maya. He says, I am seated in your heart, I am taking you onward towards your destiny. You are seated in the state of material, recognizing that not a blade of grass moves without God's consent. Intuitively guided by God who is seated in your heart, you will find opportunities. You will find that God in your heart will intuitively enlighten you on the path that you have to take in your work, in your job, in your career. All these will intuitively come to you. God, who is seated in the hearts of people around you, will speak to you and advise you. In this way, a lot of the suffering of the external world will be avoided. A lot of suffering of the external world will be avoided. Because you are doing your job, you're doing your duty, you're not seeking the fruits, you're not considering yourself to be a great doer. And because all the work is done and you're not seeking credit or fruit, people will look upon you as a divine personality. And God in their hearts will speak to you and He will guide you. And from your heart also God will guide you. So you will thus escape many of the miseries of life. You will escape many of the miseries of life which you would have otherwise had to experience. The other thing is that when you are not working, even the greatest person, even the most spiritual person, no matter how great he is, what a big guru he is, the mind becomes a source of misery because the mind is constantly chattering to you. This is called the monkey mind, which moves from one place to another place. It moves from the past into the future. It moves from this present place to places thousands of miles away. Therefore, it is very important that you silence that mind. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that to silence the mind, one has to perform yajna. This is given in detail in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where he describes many forms of yajna. But finally, Krishna points out, yajna nam japo yajnosmi. Of all forms of yajna, I am that chanting of the holy name. Therefore, when you chant, and when you chant adequately, which means you chant so that every idle moment of your day is occupied in chanting and listening with attention, to the sound of God's name with devotion and sacrifice, your sense of self will become extinguished. Your sense of oneness with the universe will become directly experienced. Yaj gnatva na punarmoham evam yasyasi pandava sarvabhutani asheshani drakshasyaatmanotami. When you realize the absolute truth, you will know that all beings are but part of me, they're in me and they're mine. As you come closer to that realization that God is everything and you are nothing, by remembering God and forgetting self, you will gradually attain to that platform of Brahman realization. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. You will become free from hankering, free from lamentation. You will look upon all people with equal vision. Such a person will be situated on the platform of Brahman. And by working in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion, always remembering God, by constantly chanting God's name and silencing the chatter in your head, your mind will become still and silent. You will have conquered and transcended the mind. Jitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahitah sitoshana sukadukeshu tatha manapanayo. For one who has conquered his mind, for him God is already reached. For him, heat, cold, joy, sorrow, honor, dishonor, they're all the same. So this is the path, this is the way. Live your life in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God. And God in your heart will guide you. Don't trust anybody else. Trust only God who will speak to you. And as you silence your mind, God's voice will become louder and louder and louder. And you will intuitively know what you have to do. You don't trust anybody else. You trust only God in your heart. And as you listen to God in your heart, you will be able to recognize God in the hearts of people around you. And you'll recognize Him speaking to you from people around you. And you will become indifferent to the miseries of the world. You will transcend them. You will become the same in heat and cold, in joy and sorrow, and honor and dishonor. You will see people with equal vision. You will look at a stone and a piece of gold with equal value. You will indeed experience this directly. You don't need a certificate from anybody else. If you're doing what I'm telling you, you must be experiencing a progressive detachment from the world and a realization that indeed all things lie in God, therein there is. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prajita Janayati Ashuveragyam Jnanam Chayada Hetukam. For one who is worshipping God in the prescribed manner, you're worshipping God, Vasudeva, Krishna, you will naturally, without making separate effort, acquire both detachment and knowledge. So I'll pause here. If you have any questions, please speak up.
Yes, sir. Hi, good morning. So you know, there's a quote by Murakami that says, "Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional." So how
It's not
true is that?
Murakami's quote. It's a very old quote.
It's a
Maybe
very old quote. Yes.
pre-Buddhist.
Yes.
Yes. So, as I said, you can't stop the rain. You can't stop the forest fire. You can't stop the tsunami. So, pain will come. You can't influence other people's behaviors beyond a point. Pain may come, but when you remember God and forget self, there will be no suffering.
Okay. So another thing is that it is said that a lot of people believe that God puts you through suffering to test you. You know, when people are going through a bad time, you know, or when we console them, a lot of people say that, oh no, don't worry, this is a test of God. How much of is it really true, and how can one really go through it?
God does not need to test you. He knows you completely. Right? Vedaham samatitani vartmani cha arjuna bhutani cha bhavishyani mam tu vedni kaschana. I know your past, I know your present, I know your future, but me nobody knows. So he knows everything about you. Pitamasya jagato mata data pitamaha. He is your father, he is your father, he is your mother, he is your great grandfather, grandfather. So he doesn't need to test you. But whatever he does for you is a means for your purification. It's a process by which he gradually turns you away from the world and towards him. Not that you should stop doing your duty or your work. That is what he's put you in the world to do. But he has put you in the world so that you will become purified. And every opportunity in this life where we experience pain is an opportunity to transcend suffering. And as we transcend suffering, we become purified. Just as gold, when it is put into fire, can be purified, so also each soul, as it passes through life, is purified by its recognition that it is not this Prakriti, but that it is the soul, that it is nothing and that God is everything.
Great. Thank you, sir. We have a question through our Zoom audience. I'll ask is, can the monkey mind be fully tamed, or can it be kept under control so that it does not greatly disturb your equanimity?
I've already told you that you can do it by chanting God's name. So if you are able to chant God's name constantly, then automatically you will find that your mind comes under control. Your mind comes under control because just like when you have a radio which is trying to give you some program, but there is static that is coming in the background, and that static in the radio, that sound, which kills the radio sound. Similarly, when you are chanting God's name, it kills all this noise of the mind, which is constantly trying to affirm and strengthen your sense of self. Is that clear?
Yes, it's clear. Thank you. And I think probably the last question is that a lot of people are asking, is suffering important for us to, for a happy life? I mean, can there really be a life without suffering of any kind?
Of course, that's what we are aspiring for. That's what we want to see. And if you're doing what I'm telling you, you are yourself, you're seeing that your suffering is becoming less. If you're chanting, as I'm telling you, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, you're performing your work in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God, you will feel and you will recognize that the pinpricks of everyday life will affect you less and less and less.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, sir. These were the questions that we have for this week. And in case you want to add something to the session or to tell something to our audience, please go ahead before we wrap up the session.
No, I think we'll conclude. And all I can say is Hari Om,
Hari
Jai
Om, Hari Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. See you next week. Thank you.